I want to tell you about a time where I met an undergrad student the first time I was working here at St Aldates. She was a second-year medical student. She was studying at Queen's, which is just over there, down the road over there. And she had grown up not hearing about Jesus, but she'd come to college and she'd met some Christians in her college, and she'd been intrigued by them. And they brought her along to a week of talks about Jesus that had been organized by a group of Christians, by the Christian Union in the university. And that's where I met her. And it was clear that she had loads of questions. So we made a plan that we would meet every week, and we would look at one of the eyewitness accounts that we have of the life of Jesus together. And so we'd been doing that for a few weeks. And there was one afternoon, I remember it so vividly. We were sat in Costa Coffee, you know, the one that's opposite Marks and Spencer's. We were sat there, and we had just been looking at another part in the gospel. And as we were chatting and we were talking about our need for Jesus, the Holy Spirit was really stirring her heart, and we were talking through her questions. And it got to this moment, and she looked at me and she said, "Laura, this is true. I need Jesus." And so in the middle of this coffee shop, maybe you've been there, in the middle of this coffee shop, we were sat at the table, and I said to her, "You know, right now you can pray." And so we prayed, and she did, and it was this wonderful moment. And do you know what happened? After that moment, she sort of paused, and she looked at me, and she said, "Okay, Laura, now what?" Do you know what? I thought that was a brilliant question. Okay, Laura, now what? You know, underneath that question was this realization that Jesus, he's meant to make a difference to our lives. You know, she'd seen it. She'd seen the difference that Jesus makes to the lives of the people in her college who had intrigued her. She'd seen the difference as she'd come along to St Aldates with me a few times. And she'd seen the difference as we together had started looking at those stories in the gospel of those who had encountered Jesus, this change, this transformation, this difference. And so she's there in the coffee shop, and she's saying, "I believe this is true." And so now what, Laura? Now what? You know, if James, the writer of this letter that we're looking at together in the mornings over these next few weeks, if he'd been sat there in Costa Coffee with us, I think he would have had something to say. You know, I think this whole letter of James is a little bit like a response to that question in the coffee shop. So now what?